Hello guys, hope you're doing well. Today, I'll clear up a common issue you might face when installing Windows. The error, Windows can only be installed to a GPT disk. This message basically means Windows cannot be installed because the selected disk has an MBR partition table, while your system is set to UEFI mode, which requires GPT. Older systems often use the MBR, master boot record, partition style, but that's not compatible with UEFI-based installations. This mismatch prevents Windows from being installed unless your disk's partition scheme matches your system's firmware. And since Windows 11 requires UEFI plus GPT, it's mandatory for modern setups. Let's understanding UEFI and Legacy in simple terms. I know some of you already get the cause of the error, but for those who aren't familiar with these hardware settings, let me explain in 2 lines. UEFI and Legacy are technologies built into your motherboard, and you can switch between them from the BIOS settings. If your BIOS is set to UEFI, you need a GPT-formatted bootable USB. If it's set to Legacy, you need an MBR bootable USB. That should already clear up half of your confusion. Now, let's move on to the second important factor, your drive format. When installing Windows, your drive's partition scheme must match the format of your bootable USB, meaning if you're installing GPT Windows, your drive should also be in GPT format, and if you're installing MBR Windows, your drive should be MBR too. Let me show you how to check your current drive format, because this is also important to understand why you're facing this issue. Like I mentioned earlier, your USB format and partition drive must match for Windows to install properly. So let's check it. Right-click on the Windows button and find Disk Management, then click on it. Now let me expand it to full screen so you can see everything clearly. Alright, don't get confused, I'll explain everything step by step. At the bottom, you'll see Disk 0, Disk 1, Disk 2, Disk 3, and so on. These are your physical hard drives or SSDs installed in your PC. These are not partitions, C, D, E, etc., but the actual storage devices inside your system. Now let's focus on my primary disk, which also contains the C drive where my Windows is installed. Look at the very first box of this disk. You'll see it says EFI System Partition. This means the disk is in GPT format. Like I mentioned before, GPT is used for UEFI, also called EFI mode. MBR is used for BIOS/Legacy mode. Since my drive is in GPT format, I can easily install Windows using a GPT bootable USB without any issues. But in your case, it's not the same. That's why you're getting errors. Either your USB is formatted as MBR, but your drive is GPT, or your drive is MBR, but your USB is GPT. That's where the mismatch is happening. So restart the video, follow the steps, and match everything properly to identify your issue. I know it can be a bit confusing for beginners, but once you get this, it'll be super easy. Fixing the Windows can only be installed to a GPT disk. Error. Before starting, note down your disk's total and use space. This will help you identify the right drive later. Method 1. Convert the disk to GPT during Windows installation. If your system is in UEFI mode, your disk must use the GPT partition style. Converting it will allow you to install Windows without issues, but keep in mind, this process will erase all existing data on the disk. This method is recommended if you're setting up a new system or if you can afford to wipe the disk completely. Boot your PC using the Windows installation media. At the initial setup screen, press Shift plus F10 to open Command Prompt. Type disk part and press Enter. Now type list disk and press Enter to display all available drives. Identify the disk where you want to install Windows. You can recognize it by its size. Type select disk X, replace X with the correct disk number, and press Enter. Now type clean and press Enter. This will erase everything on the disk. To convert to GPT, type convert GPT and press Enter. If you want to convert to MBR instead, simply type convert MBR and press Enter. But remember, MBR won't work unless you disable UEFI and secure boot from BIOS. Since MBR is an older partitioning system, it's not compatible with secure boot. You must switch UEFI to Legacy mode in BIOS for MBR to function properly. Type exit and close Command Prompt. Now, you can proceed with your Windows installation without any obstacles.